History will soon be in the hands of the jury. A group of 12 men and women in New York could tell us as soon as tomorrow if the 45th president of the United States and the presumptive Republican nominee for president, Donald Trump, should be convicted or not.
It's going after Joe Biden's political opponent because he can't do it himself.
And if this didn't already feel straight out of a movie, one of today's key figures sent to the courthouse by President Biden's campaign turned out to be Robert De Niro, who leveled this charge to Trump supporters.
You're washed up. You're washed up.
We're trying to be gentlemen in this world.
You're washed up.
You are gangsters.
You're washed up.
You are gangsters.
Closing arguments should wrap up at any moment, and when Donald Trump heads to the cameras, we will show it to you live. Come on in. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. All right, here we are. Here we go. Hanging out with us today, Scott Bolden, former D.C. Democratic Party chairman, NewsNation contributor as well. Nan Hayworth, the former Republican congresswoman from the state of New York. Mark Lauder is a former special assistant in the Trump administration. And Linda Tran, former senior advisor to the Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. It could be a wacky week. Could it not? We don't know how this week is going to go, really, because the jury is going to get this, I guess, as soon as tomorrow, potentially. And who knows? They could give a verdict in a matter of hours, in a matter of days. I don't know if this will bleed into next week. We're going to get into all that. The retired four-star general, Wesley Clark, going to be joining us here on the Hill momentarily. Your hotel room in New York, why it might cost a lot more this summer, and the direct line to the southern border. Just some of what we're going to get into. But Mark, of course, as we await the word out of New York with the closing arguments there set to wrap up at any moment. You know Donald Trump well. He served in the administration. What are they saying in Trump world right now?
I think they finally figured out what other crime he is supposedly accused of. It took them the entire trial in closing arguments to say that they think this is tied to the election law. And when the FEC already said it's not a federal election violation. So bad day for the prosecution. I think the Trump team is happy. And it's 12 people in New York, but I think they've got at least one of them.
Well, if I may just very briefly, the allegation about the FEC isn't that FEC said it wasn't a crime. Under New York law, it is a crime not to report a contribution under state law as well. So the closing argument isn't done yet, but let's not confuse the whole legal piece right there, because one's federal law, one's state law.
8-9 hours of closing arguments. Is that normal?
On the defense side?
Well, both. I mean, it's kind of like 4 and 4.
It's
long to me, no?
It's a lot of facts, a lot of documents. It is very long, but it's a complicated case. It's a case of first impression. And so, you don't want to bore the jury, of course. Right. I think the defense took 2 hours. That seemed like a sufficient, but this is an extraordinary case.
Right.
And so they're making extraordinary arguments and stuff.
All right, let's head now to Manhattan, where NewsNation's Laura Ingle is outside the courthouse with the very latest. Laura, I guess they're still in there, and the former president is taking to social media, is he not?
That's right, and he's taking to social media at the second afternoon break, and we are still going. We knew that this was going to be a long day, and here we are. The prosecution started their closing arguments at around 2 o'clock Eastern. We're still going. And the jurors have told the judge that they are willing to stay until 7 or 8 o'clock tonight, that they have childcare. So they are in there. We understand that there's a PowerPoint presentation going on. We've heard that a little bit of people getting tired at the end of the day. They took a break at 5 o'clock and they are back. I think the hope is that this will all get wrapped up by the end of the day so that jury instructions can take place tomorrow. You mentioned the social media posts. Let's take a look at what the former president is putting out there in the world of the trial. He says, boring, all caps, filibuster, all caps, making his point, and he's going to talk to us again, we assume, as he does at the end of the court day. He certainly has made his message clear here. The defense saying, look, the prosecution did not prove their case. There are plenty of holes that you cannot send the former president, find him guilty based on Michael Cohen, a proven liar, calling him the gloat, making a play on words about the goat.
Yeah.
So listen, It's been a wild day. Robert De Niro was here talking on the Biden campaign's behalf, so we still have more to go. We'll let you know what happens as we move through this hour.
Laura Ingle live for us there in Midtown Manhattan. Laura, thanks so much. Talk to you soon. Come on in, News Nation's legal contributor Jesse Weber, host of the Law and Crime Network, and May Melman, former Trump White House attorney. Hello to you both. Scott, I want your opinions here as well. The rest of the panel, too. So here's how I think is the best way to break this down. What happened today? Here's what Donald Trump's attorney said when he made his argument. He called, and Laura referenced this, Michael Cohen, the MVP of liars. Michael Cohen is the GLOAT, the greatest liar of all time. He is literally the greatest liar of all time. All right, May, I'll start with you since I think you know Todd Blanche well. What was the argument that he was trying to make there, and is it successful?
Yeah, so Michael Cohen is the key to Trump's state of mind. Did Trump have an intent to defraud or an intent to conceal a crime, basically, when he paid the $130,000 to Michael Cohen? Did he intend to cover up an election law crime? And so Michael Cohen is the only person who has provided testimony linking any of this together. And Michael Cohen also stole $60,000 from Trump. So they're clearly not on the same page money-wise. Michael Cohen is a convicted perjurer. And so by saying the words that come out of Michael Cohen's mouth cannot be trusted, you break a key link there.
So, Jesse, here was the prosecution. Quote, the question is not if you like Cohen or if you want to go into business with him. It's whether he has usable, reliable information about what went down in this case. And the truth is he was in the best position to know.
You know why the prosecution's taking so much time? Because they realize how problematic Michael Cohen's testimony is. But remember what they said. You don't have to find a conspiracy.
Sorry, I don't mean to jump in right off the top, but here's the average person to me thinks like 8 hours of this, I don't know. That can't be normal.
No, you know what makes this unique, Blake? You know what makes this unique is that the prosecution, and by all accounts, the jury is glued to this. They need to understand not only if Donald Trump is guilty of a crime, but what that crime is. And I have to tell you that the jury instructions that were put forward were favorable to the prosecution. We're going to hear them tomorrow, where the jury doesn't have to be unanimous on what that underlying crime is. So you can have one jury member say, I think Donald Trump falsified business records to cover up a tax crime. I think he falsified them to cover up an election crime. And so that's a big win for the prosecutors. But Michael Cohen, they're saying you don't need him to find that there was an illegal conspiracy here. Prosecutors are spending so much time here defining what is the illegal conspiracy or what is the crime, what is the intent to defraud. That's why it's not such a straightforward case. And they are really hammering it home because this is their last opportunity to do so.
All right, last point on the legal side, and then I want to get to Robert De Niro, because yes, Robert De Niro was involved in all of this today. Believe it or not, here we are. Todd Blanche, he got reprimanded. Todd Blanche represents Donald Trump. He got reprimanded for saying this, quote, you cannot send someone to prison. You cannot convict somebody based upon the words of Michael Cohen. The judge, May and Jesse, did not like that. But Todd Blanche got exactly what he wanted, right? And the key there is him basically telling the jury, you're not really going to send a former president of the United States to prison for this, are you?
I will make the point that I think that was intentional, because they might be saying, this falsifying business records, what is this, a slap on the wrist? I think the idea of realizing their decision could send the former president to prison gives them something to think about. I think it was intentional, but how do I know?
Jesse, or May, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the point of either side is to make your case as simple as possible, right? The simplest explanation, the simplest case wins. And I think the theory for the Trump side is you have to trust Michael Cohen in order to find Trump guilty. That is the theory of the case. You have to rely on Michael Cohen, whatever it is, whatever the thing is. Now you've forgotten. It's been weeks of trial. But you know that the thing that you need to do is rely on Michael Cohen, and you just really can't do that. That is a simple, straightforward case. I think it's much simpler to grasp than what the prosecution is trying to weave together.
We know, Blake, the defense is always going to try to simplify it. And in simplifying it, they've got to be credible. And in this case, believing in Michael Cohen or not, that's the crux of the case. That's just false. Because what's taken for 4 hours, along with what you said, Jesse, is them making the case that take Michael Cohen's testimony away. Say you don't believe him. There's corroborating evidence and witness testimony that support this. And by the way, this is Donald Trump's guy, right? This isn't some lawyer from some big law firm. This is Donald Trump's guy. Donald Trump traffics in this space with Michael Cohen. The prosecution didn't choose him. Donald Trump chose him. And that's why the government's got to make that case and make sure that jury understands how they connect the dots to why this is a felony, let alone a misdemeanor. They've got their work cut out for them, but that's going to take 4 hours. And as we say, because I've practiced law as a former prosecutor in New York, in one of those courtrooms there, for the prosecution, if they deliberate long, they deliberate wrong. If they come back soon, then you can look for a prosecution verdict.
We'll leave it there. Jesse Weber, May Mailman, talk to you soon, probably tomorrow. Have a good one.
Good.
See you then.
You too.
Thanks, Blake.
You got it. Of course. And then there's Robert De Niro.
My favorite actor.
There's Robert De Niro. So the Biden campaign sent in, Linda, they sent in Robert De Niro today to go outside the courthouse because what happened, right? The Trump campaign realized Donald Trump is under a gag order. Donald Trump cannot say everything he wants. So we'll send other Republicans out there to do the talking for him. And the Biden campaign today sent Robert De Niro there.
Yeah.
Why?
Well,
because now the Trump folks are saying, look, this links it directly to the Biden campaign, does it not? That's what they're saying.
Well, I mean, this is actually, we should just take pause and recognize what a momentous occasion it was today for the Biden campaign to wade in at all.
Yeah.
In fact, all we've been talking about for weeks is the fact that the Biden campaign, the administration and its allies have been as far removed from the trial itself as they possibly could be. And that was intentional, to try not to make it seem political.
So why did they do, so here's Robert De Niro earlier today, and then I want to get your and Ann's reaction on the other side.
If Trump returns to the White House, you can kiss these freedoms goodbye. If he gets in, I can tell you right now, he will never leave.
Why'd they do that?
I think, first of all, we're so far down the line of this trial that whatever happened today is obviously not going to be impacting or influencing anyone. So if you were going to take a moment, this was probably it. And they've also made really clear that Robert De Niro is a voice that they plan to exercise as part of this campaign. You just saw a series of ads that they put together, and the most prominent one is narrated by Robert De Niro, one of the most recognizable Hollywood voices out there. The second thing I want to call out, though, is it wasn't just Robert De Niro. Yes, Hollywood actor, famous person. But you also had two officers who were there on the scene on January 6th, the Capitol riots. So they were telling a holistic picture in just one photograph, if you were standing there looking at them, of all the things that might make you raise an eyebrow about the Trump administration.
And you say what?
Well, the entire trial should indeed raise many eyebrows and has been among incredible legal experts who have no allegiance to Donald Trump, who are saying, look, this case, whatever happens, they've been following this case and saying this is going to be eminently appealable. This would be overturned on appeal if it is a guilty verdict. What I fear what Judge Marchand is going to say tomorrow is, look, effectively the jury, look, whatever you do, just convict him, okay? That's all.
Just not going to say that.
No, of course not. No, but in so many words, I think that's what he's going to say, because what is desired is a conviction, because they could say he's a convicted felon. And so it is deeply politicized. I think Mr. De Niro sounded unhinged today. Donald Trump wants to destroy the world, wants to destroy the United States, wants to destroy New York, none of which has any, obviously, substantiation. And I think the public has indicated that they're not going to take this verdict on its face as prima facie evidence that Donald Trump is a bad man.
So the closing argument's still ongoing right now, as you heard Laura Ingle report. This could go until 7 or 8 o'clock tonight. For all that's going on, it's fascinating for me to hear, the jurors have kid coverage. So they can stay later tonight, right? There you go. Just real world folks trying to weigh in and figure out what comes next with the former president of the United States. If Donald Trump ends up coming out to speak here in this hour, we will take his comments live. Still to come here, though, on the Hill over the next 45 minutes or so, the retired 4-star General Wesley Clark joins us in about 20 minutes' time. What he makes of China's new $47 billion move. Plus, great news for homeowners and a roadblock for the American dream. What we learned today about housing costs. in the United States. But first, on the other side of the break, a live look at New York City, the heart of the summer tourism season, basically upon us right now, but good luck finding a decent hotel rate. How prices are being driven by the immigration crisis. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation. Back in a few. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. Live look once again at the Manhattan courthouse, where we continue to follow former President Trump's New York trial. At this moment, prosecutors are continuing with their closing arguments. The prosecutor telling jurors there is definitive proof the payments from Michael Cohen to Stormy Daniels were not legal reimbursements. The defense arguing those payments were not fraud, and prosecutors disputed that claim. The closing arguments ongoing. If Donald Trump steps out from those doors and talks, we will show you his comments live. All right, meantime, while summer approaches, travel ramps up. Tourists heading to the country's most populous city, that one, New York, will notice hotel rooms are now more expensive than ever. In New York City, the New York Times reports that roughly 135 out of the 680 hotels scattered across the city's 5 boroughs entered the immigration program that allows migrants to be housed in hotels. Now, that means fewer beds are available for tourists. You essentially get a supply-demand crunch. The average hotel price for every traveler has jumped 8.5% in a year. Average hotel costs right now across the Big Apple, some $300. Nan, you live there?
Yes.
Or just outside the
I do.
Outside the city?
Outside.
I don't know how this changes anytime soon. Because if the issue is at the southern border,
yes,
and immigrants coming across and New York housing them and having to put up people who need beds.
Yes. Right.
What's the solution?
Well, New York.
In New York City.
Right.
Or is the solution at the southern border?
They'd have to change the law in New York City to eliminate the right to shelter, at least the right to shelter for non-citizens of New York City, let's say. That's what's holding migrants in New York City, is that they have a right to shelter.
Right.
So that's the conundrum. Interestingly enough, New York City Council has managed to legislate that Airbnbs can't fully do business, so we could really use them right now, but they won't legislate that non-citizens have to be housed somewhere else.
Another shining example of economics 101, something foreign to Democrats.
Well, what
supply and demand. I mean, you remove the supply, the demand stays the same, the price goes up.
Right.
Yes, all of these hotels are making money at the taxpayer expense,
yes,
but now the business people who want to go to New York, families that want to go visit the Big Apple, see the 9/11 memorial, they can't afford to go.
So what would you say to that, Linda? Because 680 New York hotels, 135 of them are in this program. 121,000, give or take, New York hotel rooms. 16,000 of them, or 16,500, are taken up right now by migrants.
Well, it is worth noting that many of those 100-plus hotels got into this program because they were on the verge of default and bankruptcy during the COVID pandemic and the crisis that ensued from there. They might not have existed, but for the fact that they got involved.
We're out of COVID and looking forward.
That's why they got involved, for sure. And there are somewhere around 8,000 hotel rooms that are in the pipeline to be built. So there's going to be a little bit of easing. But one thing I would point out is that New York writ large has a housing crisis. It's not just about the hotel room. The former congresswoman is nodding vigorously here because it's true. There are all
bad government policies.
Well,
so I do agree with you.
There are a whole lot of people who want to be in New York, whether it's to live there permanently or to come as tourists. That's a good news problem. The bad news problem is there's a limitation on the amount of housing there is.
Yeah, but I haven't heard the president's name come up, but it's right at the back of my Republican friends' throats. The reality is...
Which president? Biden or
Biden. No, not former.
Okay.
But I know. But is the issue of the lack of affordability or the lack of rooms? Because I can tell you those percentages aren't that high. Those aren't leading brands, if you will. I'm going to be in New York this weekend, and I found a hotel room that was reasonably priced, if you will. So
that's not fair to working
people. The reality
people.
is, well, I'm working people. I have a job. I mean, my goodness gracious.
You've got a highly remunerative job.
$300 a pop right now on average.
Yeah.
Price is going up 8%. I just come back to I don't know the solution.
Where is the line?
Unless the solution is just solely at the southern border.
Where is the line between housing immigrants and the cost of a hotel room and the availability of a hotel room. Where is that statistic? Because it seems that we are, this is aspirational almost, that this has to be the case, when in reality, there could be a lot of economic factors that drive the prices up, including corporations who own hotels increasing the price. That's a real factor.
This is
okay,
when there's competition.
That shows the line between migrants taking up hotel rooms, which was like 1/6, I think, and the price of hotels and the availability of hotels.
But I mean,
where is that statistic?
It's supply and demand, though, right? Like, it's supply and demand doesn't. It's not specific to this. I mean, that's just if you squeeze supply of something and the demand is the same or more, prices go up.
You're supposing that, if you will, versus having some real analysis. 1/6 of the rooms being taken up by migrants who were sent there by Republican states.
It's agnostic to the example's agnostic, right? Like.
Right.
If you have a certain level and it's being taken, like it's just basic supply and demand. That's why I asked. I don't know if the solution is build more, change policies at the border.
Change policies at the border.
Think about the 25,000 that were in the Bronx, the 107,000 that were in New Jersey. When they're coming in for date night to go to Broadway, when they're going in to have their family because they don't have big enough places to have their family stay. It's affecting all of those people.
But the economy,
another failure of this administration.
And it's pricing out the working folks who don't have lots and lots of money.
Last word,
more than anyone else.
The economy does not dictate hotel room or the rate of hotel rooms, not necessarily their availability.
It does.
That's the hotel. Well, that if they decide that they can get more money for a given room, then they make that decision. That's not the economy and that's not the White House.
That's economics 101 and why we have high inflation.
They can't get more money for a given room if there are more rooms.
Here's the bottom line.
I gotta get on. Sorry, the retired 4-star General Wesley Clark is joining us on the other side of the break. China is making a big $47 billion move. It focuses all on chips. What's that all about? You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation. Back in a few. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. The closing arguments continuing in former President Trump's New York trial. The prosecution is in several hours now of its presentation. The defense went earlier today. The prosecution said a few moments ago, quote, "No one could sign the Donald Trump checks other than Donald Trump," end quote, as a way to show he would know what the money to Michael Cohen was meant for. And during a recent court break, Trump posted a couple messages to his social media platform. One of them said, quote, "boring." The other one said, quote, "filibuster." All right, President Biden now. He will soon be forced to pay attention to Hunter Biden's trial on gun charges. That starts next Monday. Ahead of the trial, President Biden visited his daughter-in-law, Hallie Biden, over the weekend in Delaware. Hallie, who was married to Beau Biden and then was involved with Hunter Biden, is a witness in the case. The White House said this when asked earlier if the upcoming trial was discussed.
This was not about that. This was about literally the 9th anniversary of the passing of his son. That is upcoming in days.
Okay, so I think we all agree here you cannot tell an individual how to cope, when to cope, where to cope, and how to go about it. Obviously, right? Everyone agrees. Former press secretary to a Republican vice president, former right hand to a Democratic cabinet member. You both agree that this was potentially a misstep from the White House because when President Biden goes and visits someone, everyone knows.
That's right.
When someone goes to visit the president, you can kind of keep it secret.
For the most part.
For the most part.
I mean, look, I think fundamentally everything I know about this president is that he cares very deeply about his family. And that once you're in that family, you're in it. You don't just get removed from the fact that your spouse has passed away. I believe that he went there to share grief. I really do. That said, was it great optics? Absolutely not. I think this president, though, will do what he's going to do if he feels like it's the right move.
The thing is that, again, this is about optics. And if Hallie Biden had been summoned to the Rehoboth Beach House or the Wilmington Mansion or the White House, and she comes in, we're not going to find out about it for months until the visitor logs come out.
Nobody knows about it for a very long time.
No one knows about it.
And this happens you would think all the time. People come, you know this, in and out of the White House all the time.
And you know when you were a family member, the president, vice president, the secretary, can't just pick up and come to the birthday party or can't pick up. You can pick up the phone, but you can't just pack up and go anywhere quickly or easily. So
it was
despite normal, you can sometimes be, why don't you come see, we'd love to check in on you and see if you're okay.
Right.
this just looks bad. We wouldn't be talking about this if they'd handled it.
So they talk about optics. You think there's a legal aspect to this too?
Yeah, she's going to be a witness for the government.
Right.
Next week. By doing this visit.
The case starts next week.
By participating in this visit, it's going to come up at trial because the defense is going to raise it to make sure that in their cross-examination of Haley, that the president, that conversation was all about grief and otherwise. Because the government, I'm surprised that the government raises it to take the edge off. If this comes up, then they'll raise it with her. That is, was he trying to unduly influence a government witness merely by his conversation with her? I don't think. I take him at his word. I don't know the president personally, but I will say this, that the optics weren't good, and this could come up at trial, which just adds another unnecessary political layer to what Hunter Biden is going through.
To your point, Scott, this is not the trial that Joe Biden is involved in. This is the skeevy trial. This is the drugs, the sex, and the gun. The next one is where Joe Biden.
Are you talking about the Trump trial or the Hunter Biden trial?
Hunter Biden trial.
Oh, Hunter Biden trial.
Remember that laptop thing?
And the foreign businesses that come up later.
Turned out that laptop, everything was real.
He just put himself into this.
Sorry, I got confused. Forgive me.
All right. Meantime, are we now entering a new arms race with China, or are they just reacting to us? Beijing now setting up a $47 billion state-backed investment fund aimed at semiconductors. Those are the high-tech chips that help power our daily life and will unquestionably shape the future of technology. But are they actually just playing catch-up? Consider this. $47 billion is a mere fraction of the market cap of NVIDIA, the California-based behemoth now worth some $2.8 trillion, which is also believed to control potentially up to 95% of the AI chip market. Joining us now, the retired four-star General Wesley Clark, also the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. General Clark, thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Nice to speak with you, as always. The $47 billion from China and this focus on chips, what do you make of it?
China wants to catch up. China doesn't want to be held to account by the United States and have pressure put on by the United States on its foreign policy or domestic policy. And the United States sort of feels the same way. So this is two great nations sort of pulling apart from the interlocking relationship they had for 25, 30 years. It's a realization on the part of both nations that our interests are not coincident. China wants its recognition as the great civilization of the world. It wants Taiwan back. The United States doesn't want to be challenged. It sees the international rules-based order as fundamental, and it sees technological lead by the United States as essential in deterring Chinese potential aggression.
You know, I mentioned NVIDIA, General. This is now the third largest company in this country. It snuck up quick, and it is massive. Is it too big to fail for the United States? Is this the most important company in this country right now, potentially?
Yes, but NVIDIA has some other challenges. And, you know, the key technology is actually Dutch technology, which is the extreme ultraviolet technology to cut those sub-5 nanometer chips. And so the United States is working with allies to withhold that technology from China. So China's investment is an effort to catch up. And meanwhile, the United States and our allies will try to move ahead into the next advance. This is all about Moore's law and how many chips you can put on a wafer, how many transistors you can put on a wafer.
You mentioned Taiwan, sir. Oh no, sorry. I'll finish your thought.
No, this is the essence of the competition, because based on the density of the computational power that you can put in one of these machines, that's not only, that's quantum computing, that's artificial intelligence, that's weapon systems, that's new technological advances in fields like physics, it's new communications technology. It's so fundamental.
We did a story the other day about the possibility of AI fighter pilots, which seems like it might be sooner rather than later, but that is certainly a story for another day. You mentioned Taiwan, sir, and China. We saw them with drills circling Taiwan. I wonder if you think, General, that we are at a point of when and not if for a potential invasion.
Well, I think it is too early for Xi to move because his military forces aren't there. He would like to intimidate the leadership in Taiwan. He'd like to convince them their cause of semi-independence is hopeless, and that's the aim that he's established. And so these kinds of drills show that to the people there. They also show the United States that this would be a tough thing to fight. So far across the Pacific, so far away from bases, so close to Chinese bases. Right. China has the largest Navy in the world. It has regional air superiority in the Western Pacific based on its number of bases and fighter aircraft. This would be a tough thing for the United States, and this is diplomatic signaling.
We have to leave it there. I paused on your title at the top because it is so distinguished, and there's a few of them. But we thank you always, the retired four-star General Wesley Clark, for joining us here on the Hill. We'll talk to you again, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You got it. Have a good one. All right. Meantime, a scene that is straight from a dystopian movie. Check this out. Man's best friend on the battlefield. We talk about AI and what could potentially come. China unveiling robotic dogs carrying machine guns during its annual military drills with Cambodia. Would you look at that? The video shows the remote-controlled robots can jump, run, and behave like real dogs while going on combat missions and approaching potential enemy targets. Oof. Around the table we go. What do you see there?
Terminator 10. I'm terrified.
The future, and it's not good.
Yeah.
Future, and it's not good? What do you see there?
I think of the late, great Charles Krauthammer, who said very seriously that he thought the fact that we had not identified intelligent life elsewhere in the universe was because when intelligent life gets to a certain point, societies destroy each other.
I think I've seen that in the movie, and I was trying to think about what movie I've seen that weapon in, that robot in. It's kind of scary, if you will.
I think I've seen that in my nightmares, have I not?
I wonder if we've got that, though. I haven't seen that on our side.
We've got Boston Dynamics. All we need to do is strap an AK-47 on and they're done.
Right.
But it does make you wonder if this is the future of fighting. I mean, AI fighter jets, artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And the arms race.
Yeah, and the arms race, all of it. It's all part of what we're dealing with.
It's a lot easier to start fighting when you're fighting with robots.
Well, exactly.
You might just be people at the controls.
Right. Robotic annihilation.
All right. Well, it turns out at least one major outlet knew for years about the upside-down American flag at Samuel Alito's home. So why did they sit on that very story right there for 2+ years? And if you're looking to buy a house, good luck. The brand new numbers are out, and they show the issue for so many Americans all across this country. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation. That on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
NewsNation tonight, Charlemagne the God in studio with Dan. The outspoken radio host has some thoughts on both parties in 2024.
Man, Republicans are more sincere about their lies than Democrats are about their truth.
Tonight, 9/8 Central on NewsNation.
Still delivering their closing arguments in the trial of the former president, Donald Trump. Prosecutors are talking about some of the testimony of the former top White House aide, Hope Hicks, who said Trump told her it was better to deal with the Stormy Daniels allegations in 2018 than right before the 2016 presidential election. The prosecutor a few moments ago asked the jury if it was good to go a little longer, and some jurors nodded yes. So the closing arguments still ongoing there in Manhattan. Once that wraps, the jury gets its instructions, and then at some point this week, we think, a verdict. That, the former president and what he's dealing with. Elsewhere, home prices. A lot of folks dealing with it. Hitting a new all-time high in March. According to a key tracker of residential real estate, this is the 9th such record in the last 12 months. The top 20 metropolitan areas, get this, across the country, these are the biggest cities, the biggest areas, jumping 7.5% on average over the past year. Cities with the highest gains include San Diego and New York, while slower growth, still very good if you own a home, could be seen in Tampa, Phoenix, and Dallas. All right, so this is a part of the American dream, right? Like get a home, raise the family. Home prices are still ripping.
Home prices are ripping. Interest rates are high.
Interest rates are high. Affordability is low.
Right.
When you're the incumbent, and he's tried to take this on, you know this, by introducing programs, but I'm not sure there's anything he can do about it.
I mean, this is another good news, bad news story, right? There's a reason. Well, there's a reason why the federal government is always trying to incentivize home ownership. We want people to own their homes, stay in their communities, build community. So the reason you're seeing, similar to the discussion we were having earlier, a rise in prices is because there are a lot of people who want to buy homes. That's the good news piece of it. The bad news piece of it, and I've been doing this since the 2000 presidential. Every cycle, we talk about what? Pocketbook issues. What are people feeling at the kitchen table? And if they feel like their kitchen table is in a rental home that they can't afford to get to a home ownership, that's not a good thing.
Yeah. I agree. More bad news for Biden. I mean, literally, there's not a single economic indicator right now that people are talking about.
Stock market, 401k.
That people are talking about. The kitchen table. The kitchen table is different.
Kitchen table, what you feel.
That's what's being decided right now. This is not from the 1990s through today, or through this time. We always judged our economy on the stock market, on the unemployment rate, a little bit on gas prices. We are in a 1970s, 80s model. Biden, even though he was around for it, doesn't know how to handle
gas prices are level from where they were a year ago, though up about 50% from where the president took office.
And that's the problem.
The gas prices?
Yeah, that's a problem, right.
That is that the biggest?
Well, it's one that people are insulted by every day.
It's gas prices and food prices, right? And this is the cherry on top that really hurts.
Exactly.
And they're but those prices are stabilizing, but that's not enough. From what they've come down, but they haven't come down enough for people to make that emotional connection.
The question is, are you better off now than you were under President Trump, who's also running? And lots of people are saying, frankly, I'm not. Well, it is a real comparative because policy matters.
Economy. He poured money into the economy,
which was dumb. That was not a good idea.
So
every gas station price,
right?
Every gas station price
they would have been employed.
Every gas station price sign that people drive by right now is a billboard for Donald Trump.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Meantime, the Washington Post now reveals that it knew about the upside-down flag in front of the home of the Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito in 2021, saying in this headline, quote, wife of Justice Alito called upside-down flag signal of distress. But it did not run a story on it after Alito's wife told a Post reporter she was the one who hung it that way, upside down, because of a neighborhood dispute. It's a much different approach from the New York Times, which printed a story about the hanging of the flag several weeks ago. So the Post knew about this, didn't write about it. The Times knew about it, wrote about it. Who's in the right here?
I would have written about it. I mean, I think it's a story. It's a Supreme Court justice's home.
I trained, went to college, spent the first 15 years of my life as a member of the media. That is not a story.
That right there.
I hate to say this. The Washington Post handled this correctly. They got the information. They got both sides. This is a neighborhood dispute. Right. The New York Times played games with it, and I rarely say that the Post did it right.
Would you agree, though, that that's why you don't do that when you are in the household of a Supreme Court justice, so that it does not eventually become a story?
The challenge we have, whether it's this is not partisan, is that they are still people, and their spouses have First Amendment rights. They have First Amendment rights. You know the risk that comes with it.
They do, but when you become a Supreme Court justice, don't you know? Like, your rights are there, but like, you're not actively donating to political campaigns. You're not actively protesting. Like, you do sort of give some things up.
And you're under a microscope. You have to know that.
You're held to a higher standard, though, because the cases that come before you are going to be dealing with political issues, business issues.
Absolutely.
And so you want to stay completely away from that, or you don't want to project what your political preference is or business preference is on any of these issues, because it's part of your job.
It's not dispositive.
You don't disagree with that,
it's not dispositive about an issue. Much as I sympathize with Mrs. Alito's gesture, I can't say I disagree with her.
And it was a legitimate neighborhood dispute,
right? And that's regrettable. But it's one thing if your action will change something that needs to be changed. You're the only person who could do it. It's dispositive.
By the way,
not so in this.
The biggest issue that I had on this was the initial headline of this gave only one side of the story, which was those who thought Alito was in the wrong and never mentioned the wife in the initial headline.
Interesting. I bet you if this got to the Supreme Court, Alito would have sided with the neighbor and their freedom of speech rights
Well,
to use them on their political
All right,
yard
that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
It's definitely freedom of speech.
By the way, speaking of freedom of speech, have you seen this? The Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene going viral over the weekend after posting a bikini photo celebrating her 50th birthday. Her post on X reads in part quotes, "Today I turned 50. Many people go into their 50th birthday thinking it's a bad thing, but I truly feel it's wonderful, and I'm so excited and grateful God let me live 50 years and do so many things." That's the post right there. It comes, as you might know, after the Democratic lawmaker from Texas, Jasmine Crockett, clashed with Greene during a House hearing that turned loud, awkward, and unruly. You have any issues with that?
I just have to do the gender thing here. How is this different than Paul Ryan posing at a weight bench and showing his biceps?
Should any of them do that?
I disagree.
If men can do it, women can do it.
So no
She's
issue?
50 years old.
No, I would call it freedom of beach.
Freedom of beach? There you go.
I don't want to see any of it. Sorry. I mean,
Paul
what is
Ryan
this?
or Margaret?
This is either one. I mean, what is...
I'd rather watch
political
MTG on the
points?
beach than Joe Biden.
I don't disagree with Scott. I like dress and decorum, but as long as someone's doing the right thing by their constituents, well.
We'll leave it there with the former Congresswoman. Coming up on the other side of the break, another speed bump in going green potentially as the Biden White House pushes electric vehicles. Some drivers are resisting because of politics. Leland Vitter joins on the other side of the break. You're watching The Hill. All right, so before we say goodbye, here's a story that caught our eye. The auto industry's move to electric vehicles, creating a divide among consumers who see the transition as a red versus blue issue. The Wall Street Journal notes, for example, how 38% said their political views shape their views of electric vehicles. 66% of those who identify as liberal had a favorable view, while that number was only 31% among conservatives. Host of On Balance, Leland Vitter, joins us now. Hello. That number is actually, I can't believe it was that high among liberals because of how they sort of are starting to despise Elon Musk.
Interesting. So you think Elon Musk is
I thought that
fully
number
associated with
close to fully associated, yeah.
Yeah, has owning an EV become like wearing a mask of 2021?
How so?
Well, it's sort of it signals so many things about you, right?
I'm not. I won't go there. I know. Here's where I'll say I'm surprised that EV adoption hasn't gone further.
Really?
Yeah.
Just go to Chicago when it's really cold. You'll figure out why. Go out where I'm from, and you got to drive